We all know the bubbly and kawaii facade Japan shows the world, the frilly fashions, lighthearted anime, and pop music. However, behind the kawaii curtain lies a dark and bloody past. Before the events of World War II, Japan was a large empire holding colonies throughout Asia. But how do today's fans view Japan? What are your impressions of Japan's involvement in World War II?
With this information, do you think Japan was a victim or an aggressor?
I actually, interestingly, think that it was a combination of the two. I think the strike on Pearl Harbor was more appropriate than, like, the United States' nuclear attacks because, you know, it's a military base during wartime. But at the same time, Japan was not ready to concede, and Japan was perpetrating some very serious military aggression. So, I don't personally condone a nuclear strike, but I think it was a very difficult situation. So I think Japan was, I think it's a gray area. I don't think they're one or the other. I think they were both.
Probably more the aggressor since they did it to us. I mean, well, they're the smartest move, and we were kind of... history is written by the victor.
Truthfully, I see two sides to this. They are, in a way, an aggressor because they did start World War II with America by bombing Pearl Harbor. However, in a sense, they could be victims because they did get dropped with an atomic bomb at the end, and a lot of innocent Japanese people were killed in the process. So in a way, I see two sides of the argument. Duct Tape Boy has been to Hawaii recently and saw that a lot of Japanese people do visit Pearl Harbor now.
I see.
Indeed, war is not black and white. It's a murky gray area. Japan, before World War II, invaded several Asian countries, including China, and in at least one instance, the rape of Nanking, Japanese soldiers raped and killed hundreds of thousands of civilians after the civilians had surrendered. And, as many interviewees said, Japan suffered massive civilian casualties because of America's use of atomic weapons.
Japan was initially a strong aggressor because of the rapid colonial expansion and the attack on Pearl Harbor. It is true Japan suffered great losses because of the war. It is also true that many civilians did not have a lot of influence over the ruling military complex. However, they also did not fight against it. Japan today has a strong sense of victims' history, that Japan is blameless for these actions, and that they were among the primary victims of the war. Based on Japan's actions before and during the war, Japan was much more of an aggressor than a victim. How do the effects of World War II affect people's enjoyment of popular culture?
I don't really think about World War II when I'm enjoying Japanese pop culture.
Though it is important to know the history, an 80-year-old war should not heavily influence our opinions of modern popular culture. Can you think of any examples of popular culture that draw influence from World War II?
Oh, they have, well, actually Italia is based off of the World Wars. I was going to say Blood Plus, but that has to do with Vietnam War. That's supposed to be your arm?
No, I'm just too late.
I know that some animes and movies nowadays from Japan kind of have World War II references to them. Trying to think of one that I've seen that's had World War II. I think the one that comes to mind is probably Grave of the Fireflies. It was made by a very popular studio in Japan quite a few years ago. It's very, very sad, but it's about two boys that are living through World War II.
Japan's popular culture has actually drawn influence from World War II. However, the references aren't always obvious. Most references are metaphorical and need to be analyzed to be seen. As shown by the answers, though, many fans don't analyze what they take in, but rather just simply enjoy it. Nearing the end of the war, Japan introduced a program with suicide bombings known as Kamikaze, referring to the divine wind that protected Japan from the Mongol invaders circa 1200 AD. How do you view kamikaze pilots?
Kamikaze actually means divine wind in Japanese, and so I think people have a misinterpretation of that word, but as someone that studied Japanese, I understand what that word means. And like knowing the Japanese society and the reason that they had kamikaze fighters was that they thought, you know, they were serving their country and making the ultimate sacrifice for their country. So knowing the culture, I understand it, and I actually have a very different opinion than what most people might perceive just because I understand the Japanese culture so much.
Yes.
since I know it decently enough, I know that it is a very great honor to do that because then they it's kind of a realization of how much they are willing to go for the better of their country, the better of their people.
Aren't kamikaze pilots? Do they involve divine wind or something?
Yeah, the ones that suicide bombed with their planes.
Oh yeah, I heard about them. They're kind of funny. I don't know why anyone want to crash their plane into anything.
I see.
I don't know, I have this kind of opinion about them. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why students do it. I'm not personally wouldn't volunteer to do it, but I mean, if you're a soldier, you're doing it for your country. I totally respect that. So.
In actuality, the kamikaze pilots were often scholars from prestigious universities who were drafted into the military. The training camps were rife with ijime, or bullying, and violent physical abuse by superiors. Unspoken threats to the pilots' families pushed them into serving. How do you view kamikaze pilots after learning that they were intellectuals who were forced into serving?
That seems like a terrible waste of intellectual stuff.
So did you know that before? Or?
Well, when World War II was happening, the culture was very different with trying to have this emphasis on war and trying to manipulate the minds of the people to do everything they could to fight this war. And pretty much, from what I understand of it, a lot of civilians were kind of in the dark, but people that were in the military were just kind of heavily forced to do things that they might not want to do, but Japanese culture, you don't stand up, you do everything that's told, and you do it the way that they tell you to do it.
Yeah, my grandfather, he was in that war, and he told me stories of when he was there in Japan. Like, everybody was afraid of him, and all he was trying to say is, look, we're not coming here just to randomly blow you guys up. We're here to try and help and stuff like that and figure things out. So all of the civilians, the Japanese civilians, were just afraid that all of a sudden these guys were just gonna rip them from their homes, burn their houses down, shoot everything up. And my grandfather was just like, where are you guys getting this? We're here just to help. So it's just kind of stunning how some things happen in such an uncontrolled way.
And so, behind the kawaii curtain, Japan is deeper and more complicated than the facade suggests. But do fans of Japanese popular culture care? The answer seems to be no, most content with just enjoying the bunraku that Japan puts on.